and welcome back to the mic for Vancouver Real Estate. As you guys can see today, I am by myself. Jeff, I guess I'll give all our listeners a quick update. Jeff's baby Jasper Chan, came out about a week ago. It was delayed. I'll leave the details. I'll let Jeff share with everybody once he comes back onto the podcast. But of course, Jeff initially wanted to be on today. The reality hits once the baby starts crying. Everything else goes on the wayside. So for today, hopefully I'll try to make this as entertaining as possible. But let's get through our November news roundup. There is some big news here that we do want to quickly talk about. So without further ado, let's go. Number 1, federal government creates mortgage stress test relief for homeowners at renewal. Well, with the interest rate increase, that's not a surprise. Survey from Angus Reid shows since March, the number of people that is struggling to pay the mortgage has doubled. And with 60% of mortgages in Canada's major bank all going to be coming up for renewal in the next 3 years, there is going to be a lot of people that has a lot of questions. Myself included, I am really not looking forward to my renewal. Because of it, the federal government announced a Canadian mortgage charter. Now, I don't want to get into too much detail. I'm going to give you guys the point forms of it. And then we can quickly talk about it afterwards. Number 1 in this charter, if you have an insured mortgage, you do not need to be requalified when it's time for mortgage renewal. This is amazing because, as a quick reminder, for insured mortgages is literally for anyone that has less than 20% down, meaning that they probably got a bigger loan, not your typical 80% loan. This is probably 90% loan, and you would imagine that these groups are the most susceptible to interest rate hikes and increased payments. So that's definitely really, really good. Second thing is there's going to be a opportunity for temporary extensions of amortization period for mortgage holders, waiving fees and costs that will otherwise be charged for relief measures. Banks also need to contact homeowners 4 to 6 months in advance for their renewals to inform them of their renewal options. Next, allow lump sum payments to avoid negative amortization, which I'll quickly talk about it. I actually did it myself as well. And lastly, interest will not be charged on the scenarios that a mortgage relief measure results in a temporary period of negative amortization. This is very good. All right. So with this being said, I guess this is my thought. I wish Jeff is here so we can bounce a couple of things off each other. My initial thought is here it comes. This is basically a semi-bailout program from the government to the homeowners. This is basically the government saying, hey, look, guys, I know we jacked up the interest rate quite a bit, but let's try not to have the housing industry collapse from under our feet. What that really means is that for anyone that is still waiting for a major correction on real estate pricing, well, think again. The government has made it very obvious with this charter that they have already chosen a side, and the side they have chosen is to protect homeowners to ensure our economy doesn't break apart or doesn't fall apart. Kind of makes sense because they need some votes, and there's a lot of homeowners out there as well, right? I think some of these are not super applicable, but there is going to be some that's extremely beneficial for people in need. I'll give you the perfect example. The extension of amortization rate. By pulling the time out, your monthly payment, will stay closer towards what you're paying now, but it will just take you longer to pay off the bank. I think for anyone that they're down to the option of I either don't eat or I pay my mortgage back quicker, they'll probably choose to pull out their amortization so they can keep their standard of living somewhat to it. I understand everybody's standard of living has really been impacted in the last couple of years. Aside from that, I would say here is a key thing. It's not a free, there is no free lunch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There is a consequence when you pull out your amortization rate. Actually, the biggest winner when you pull out your amortization rate is actually the bank. You're actually paying a lot more interest when you pull out amortization. And that's why it's important when you do have some extra money, maybe save up on the side, to pump some of that extra money into the principal to kind of speed up your mortgage payments. And that's why the charter is also allowing people to pay a lump sum payment to avoid that negative amortization. It kind of balances out depending on your own personal schedule, because I'll be really honest. This is my own personal situation. Is my investment property that's on variable. My amortization rate right now, even with the triggered rate increase about 8 times now, is 74 years. Just to somewhat keep my monthly payment roughly the same, I should really consider maybe either jacking up the lump sum that I'm doing, which I am, or I should consider just paying more every single month, just to kind of balance everything out. So once again, don't feel like this is all for homeowners. There's obviously consequences should you want to kind of go down that route, which is, once again, when you pull out your amortization, the bank makes more money. All right. We kind of quickly talk about not having to qualify for insured mortgages. That's great. So that's all really good here in regards to what the bank is. What the government is doing, sorry about that, in regards to helping out the homeowners when the time does come. Okay, so with that being said, if you're a homeowner, your mortgages, it's time you need a renewal, please talk to your bank. Obviously, now I just spent, 7 minutes or 5 minutes explaining that you have different options out there. Next article. All right, let's take a look at this next article. ABC kills badly needed motion to densify Vancouver's Shaughnessy neighborhood. One councillor called for diversification of housing within the Shaughnessy neighborhood, with new infill and multifamily housing providing purpose-built rental housing options along with bonus densities for a nonprofit. There was 3 councillors that voted yes, while all the other ones voted no, including our mayor Ken Sim, suggesting that the motion was divisive. Some of the words the councillor were using is nonsensical, distraction for staff, purely political, and purely divisive. Some of the words for the people that do agree with this motion is Vancouver is land constrained. Motions would not influence the protected heritage of Shaughnessy. Historically, Shaughnessy was a de facto apartment that has been converted back into single-family houses. So what is the harm turning it back to what it was supposed to be in the first place? Obviously, there is a clear capacity for more people to live there because Shaughnessy, if you look at the map, you're pretty much at the center of Vancouver West Side. Obviously, I'm not going to come, extending to Vancouver East Side, but you're kind of right in the middle, right? Obviously, by able to build a little bit more in Shaughnessy, it will provide more shops and services, which will bring convenience into that neighborhood. Now, lastly, as a reminder, I think we quickly talked about this in one of the news roundup many months ago. Shaughnessy is also experiencing a population decrease. When we have a housing crisis, you can kind of see where everything is kind of going, right? So my comment for this article is, once again, I think it was a month ago, we were talking about that was a Dunbar, how they didn't want to build like rental homes and stuff like that. This is kind of the same situation. This is just another stance of NIMBYism, not in my backyard. And that's what I was trying to say is, good luck trying to go against the rich. The rich is generally the ones that has some powers within the political landscape. So, I mean, what do rich people like? Let's just put it that way. Rich people likes their privacy, and they're able to afford that lifestyle. So they are not in an urgent need, or they don't feel like this is completely necessary. And obviously, I will say that just rich people are able to kind of be like, no, we don't want this. And this Vancouver is not the only city. You can go to any other city and you'll realize that for the areas that like the Hamptons, what is that island by Miami, like generally when you get into that status of homes, like they don't want more people. The exclusivity is part of the value that Shaughnessy is able to provide for them. The fact that they don't see their neighbors don't see them. In between them, they still have like, I don't know, like a whole acre of yard. Yeah. So what I think is as much as I want change in the Shaughnessy area, my gut instinct is it's probably not going to happen. The people that's in Shaughnessy will make sure that Shaughnessy stays kind of to continue its status quo. I do see the stories from both sides. I really do. And I would, if you're telling me that I have to put money on it, well, I think my money is going to go for the rich and not against the rich. Especially, we're not talking about like wealthy people. We're talking about ultra wealthy people that is extremely connected. Okay, so that's just kind of my comment there for this article. I wanted to spend more time talking about this next article. I think this one is very, very important. So listen up if you have just been kind of coasting in the last two articles. This will literally change how the city will look like in the next 10 to 20 years. Here we go. BC government to allow high-rise residential towers up to 20 stories near all SkyTrain stations and up to 12 stories near bus exchanges. So, David Eby, our provincial government premier, literally put a stamp, another stamp, I guess, it's not the first one, another stamp overriding the city's power to create more density and more housing. The city, any cities within kind of BC will be forced to allow, once again, a minimum residential building height of 20 stories, or if you want to get technical about FARs, a 5.0 FAR. FAR means floor area density for any site that is within 200 meters to a SkyTrain station. They want to see a 12-story or a 4.0 FAR for sites between 200 to 400 meters from a station, and they want 8 stories or 3.0 FAR for any distance between 400 to 800 meters away from a SkyTrain station. There is exceptions: pure commercial zoning, agricultural and industrial land uses, as well as First Nation reserve land, or anything with a safety concern, aka airport, Templeton area. Okay, for any transit-oriented neighborhood like bus exchanges, the premier has stated that the zoning will be 12 stories or a 4.0 FAR from sites within 200 meters and 8 stories for any site between 200 to 400 meters from a bus exchange. Aside from how many stories you can build, provincial government has also required cities to eliminate the minimum vehicle parking requirements within these areas. Me and Jeff, we kind of talk about parking. That actually kind of went viral on Instagram about a couple months back. Without building the parking, this will reduce construction costs. It will speed up the construction, which is obviously very important, and reduce emissions and forcefully increase public transit ridership. Now, the developer can build based on demand if they want. So, what do I mean by that is, when I used to work for a pre-sale, I guess what they will do is they will ask, do you want to buy parking? And then, however, during my time was there, the amount of parking was kind of finite. Like they will tell us like, hey, Joe, we have about 451 parking here. All right. So, pick and choose. And because there's 451, we might have like 600 homes. That's why we decided the 1-bedroom gets no parking, so on and so on and so on. But with this, at least with my understanding, is that they could probably they could start selling it first, see how many people wants to buy parking, how many people doesn't, and based on that, what they have sold, and they could actually start building that way. It's my understanding. It's a little bit backwards, like how do you plan for your performance and stuff like that. But once again, this is just all very, very interesting, giving the developer as much power as they can in regards to determining the amount of vehicles. All because they want to speed up the construction, and lower the cost so more developer is willing to build. Okay. With this new rule, the provincial government expects 100 transit-oriented development areas will be designated in about 30 cities or so across BC within the first year. And obviously more as kind of the time goes along. The individual cities could approve even higher densities and building heights. Yes, they could, but they must meet the minimum established by the provincial government. Meaning, let's say that it's Brentwood. Come on, man. Nobody's building 20-story high-rises in Brentwood. They're building 40, 50, 60 stories, right? So that just means that for areas like that, they could still build taller. If they want to build taller, then the city can actually step in and be like, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. But it cannot. And once again, I repeat, it cannot go lower than what the provincial government states. All right. So that's kind of huge. It's really, really big if you really think about it. But regardless where you are within the political landscape of things, I have to give David Eby and the NDP government big prop for pushing this through, regardless of what other people think. They just basically go, no, we need this done. Like, imagine if they tried to bring this for discussion and, basically by the time it's ready to get approved or declined, we might be voting again, right? It's kind of like that Massey Tunnel project that I always like to point out. It's like every time we have a new government, they're like, oh, we're going to redesign this. And by the time it's finally finished designing, the next government comes up and it's just like, this is garbage. We're going to redo this, right? So this is good. Like, good job, David Eby. Regardless if you hate him, you love him, there was a problem and he took it and he ran with it. He's not even thinking about votes or pissing off anyone. He just ran with it. Personally, I feel like this is obviously very needed. Regardless of the height, is the fact that developers can speed up with the construction, wait a lot less. Yes, for massive towers, they still need to go through a city, which might slow it down again. But at least for 20 stories, you could literally skip so many steps. You could just go, start building. Once again, I kind of stated when I first started with this article is that I firmly believe this will change how the city functions in terms of real estate in the next 2 decades. Overall, I think it's all good news until you really start to think about there are some neighborhoods that they might not like this. I was about to ask, if Jeff was on that article, I was going to test them on which areas do you think that this thing will be really negative or it will be impacted the most. I was thinking around SkyTrain, 22nd Avenue, the one after, was it Royal Oak, before it heads to New West. Right around 22nd Avenue by the Queensboro Bridge, there's just single family houses there. I don't see any industrials unless I didn't know that they were First Nation land. I would expect a lot of changes happening to that area. And obviously, if the 22nd Avenue SkyTrain station is going to change that much, what are we doing with Queensboro Bridge? Because it's already a human nightmare trying to get on that bridge sometimes on rush hours. Well, not sometimes, most of the time, right? So that's kind of another, in terms of SkyTrain, that's one area. production and stuff like that, a lot of those are industrial. Now, I want to shift my focus towards the bus exchanges. I might be a little biased. And I think there was another video, I think it was Steve Swirsky actually brought it up, is Stevenson Village area. A lot of people don't know Stevenson Village is actually a bus exchange. It's a fisherman's village vibe. Now imagine all the lots around Stevenson by the bus exchange. You could build 20, you could build 12, you could build 8 stories around it. I would say that essentially would kill off kind of like the neighborhood vibe. So that's going to be very interesting. And I live in Stevenson. I'm a real estate agent. I do this podcast. A lot of people know. I'm not going to be like, oh no, don't do this in Stevenson. Like, it's horrible. Then I'm no better than all those people that's just like, oh, not in my backyard. If this is approved, we do this. But just know that I think there is going to be a lot of people in the Stevenson area that would not appreciate the change of the neighborhood. They moved here because they want that fisherman's wharf, fishing village vibe. By slapping a bunch of high rises, that's 8 to 12 stories. No, I think this, if nothing gets done in terms of refining it, this is going to be the end of Stevenson, should the money make sense. That was the other thing I wanted to talk about. They could build a bunch of high rises in the Stevenson area. My only question is there going to be enough people wanting to move into the Stevenson area? That's all, because it's a little bit further away. I really try to think about other bus exchanges. I can't think of other ones that might be this negatively impacted. But if there is one that you guys think about, please, I'm all game. Let me know and why you think that it will be absolutely detrimental to that particular neighborhood. Okay? So that is a very big, once again, news that has come out. Pay attention to this. You might start seeing rapid constructions around a lot of bus exchanges, and obviously the SkyTrain station that has not been developed yet. Okay. For the last little bit, let's just group a bunch of articles together, man. Let's just talk about this all at the same time. First article, more than half of Vancouver spends 50% of the income on housing. Based on Habitat for Humanity Canada, that 53% of the BC residents are spending over half of their income on housing. 84% of Vancouver residents thinking owning a home one day is completely out of reach. Second article, roommates to extensions. How Vancouver are dealing with mortgage rate hikes. The interest rate hasn't been seen in quite a bit of years. I think. Like 34 years. So it's obviously cutting into people's daily living. Some of the things that this article saying is they're either choosing to extend the amortization. We already talked about it earlier in this podcast. By extending the amortization, you can keep your monthly payment the same, but just note that the bank is going to make a lot more money. Some people are choosing to have their families stepping in to help with the extra payments temporarily, just so that they can kind of squeeze by. And the one that this article really specifically said is that, the guy in the article could choose to sell his place, but he says that is not something that he wants. He immigrated to Canada, he worked really hard, and finally he was able to own a home that is called his space, and no one's going to ever kick him out. So that's the last thing that he wanted to do, is sell the home. So he very reluctantly got a roommate for his place and basically used the rent of the other bedroom to support the increase of mortgage. Next article, Vancouver's out-of-control living costs is why this renter is moving to Langley. So this article is saying that there was these professional couples, they were renting a 750 square foot 2-bedroom for about $4,300 per month. She felt like, she doesn't regret it. She loves the urban living. It's a great experience, but she did say that she felt every month was basically on survival mode. There was no money to be saved. There's no extra money for them to do anything. So after some long thought, as much as they love the downtown vibe, they decided to move out to Langley for a 3-bedroom townhouse, 1,400 square foot for $3,000 a month. The catch? Well, the person from the article does work from home. This is how she can make this work. Yeah, I mean, we kind of talked about it. You don't have to live in the city core. You could move out a little bit further out as your first property or as a rental property just to save. Yes, I know that transportation, traffic is the highest level of stress for a lot of people. But you know what is also a lot of stress? Not having enough money at the end of the month. We're going to have to pick and choose. There is no right answer. If there is a right answer, everybody would have flooded into that answer already. Everybody is doing their best to try to make it work. It's funny because I was actually scrolling Instagram the other day. There was this lady that was basically complaining and crying in front of social media, saying that, oh, I don't know how we're gonna make this work. Like, we don't have any money. I think she was saying that she was living in a bungalow, 1,100 square foot, and like they both have good jobs. I think she was a nurse. Her husband was something else, good income, and at the end of the month, they don't have anything. And then another lady just said, yeah, same. So we sold everything and we moved into the middle of nowhere that nobody wants to live. And there is no entertainment. It's a town. You don't have water. You don't have an ocean. You don't have a mountain to look at. But she pays a fraction of her rent. And she definitely is making this monthly pay, this economic thing work a lot better. So her idea was saying that it's like, what do you want? Yeah, there is an option for you to move to something that's really, really cheap, but you're in the middle of nowhere, right? Or you want all of this stuff. You want the beautiful air. You want the nightlife. You want the beautiful, yummy restaurants. Well, yeah, that's what you want. Unfortunately, in today, because whatever reason you want to pinpoint is that we're going to have to pay for it in terms of accommodation. Okay? All right. Next article. I guess because of all of this, retention problems. Immigrants are now leaving Canada at a faster pace. Onward migration rates has been growing since the 80s. It was 0.8% in 2016, 1.15% in 2017, 1.18% in 2018. All of this seems very small, but over 25 years, this basically concludes that almost 25% of immigrants has gone on to something else. And that, if you put it that way, is quite a bit of people. The average attrition rate in the 80s was about 18% for immigrants. It turned out to be about 21% in the 90s. And they just did another study in 2022. And now they're saying that 30% of working age adults between the age of 18 to 34 stated they would like to move to another country. All right. That is quite a bit for us to kind of go through. I have several comments. I quickly just run through them. I guess the first thing is, my whole family turned out to be onward migration. So I have real life experiences with this. And obviously I see it firsthand. And this is well before we're under the housing crisis. And throughout my years here, maybe because I'm Asian, I have dealt with some immigrants that has stated some very ridiculous stuff on their thoughts on what Canada is to them and what they see this place to be. One of the quotes that literally got me so wild up that I actually got pretty angry at the guy. He said that we were just talking about, I think it was booking an appointment or just some sort of courtesy, Canadian courtesy. And then I'm translating here. He said, I'm here to live. I don't give a about what happens to this country because by that time, I will be gone. Canada is hopeless to make money with its own high tax rates and lack of economic actions. So I'm here just to enjoy my life, but my heart is not here. Okay? Obviously, I don't want to talk about what happens afterwards. We got into a yelling match, but then again, thinking back, I was in my early 20s. I really shouldn't be doing something like that. But hey, look, we live and we learn. Okay? So my biggest thing about all of this is, online migration, obviously it happens. It happens to every single country. But once the percentage starts to go up, that means that we are also experiencing a brain drain. And we are wasting tax dollars on the people that has elected to stay in Canada. Because what do I mean by that? The people that said those ridiculous things, obviously they don't have a job. They're not paying any serious taxes, but they get to benefit everything that the Canadian government is providing to them. Okay? So I guess I'll explain to you in a way is like, why am I so angry is because when I grew up in Canada, I knew that Canada was going to be home. So this is the country that I care about the most. And my biggest thing is people like this is basically putting burden on whoever's left, like whoever wants to stay in Canada. And the ideology that I'm thinking with this article is just think about this and see whether this wiles you up a little bit. You have a home, you have a house, let's say. You invite a friend, well, not maybe a friend, just a roommate that wants to rent to your home. When he comes in, he pays minimal rent because he's a student or whatever, right? He pays very, very, very little rent. He gets to enjoy, it's a nice house. He gets to enjoy the AC. He gets to enjoy the marble finishings, the nice kitchens with the HRV heating, air exchange system for the freshest airs. Those are trees, by the way. And that's what I'm trying to hint at. And then they get to enjoy, the nice Miele appliances and stuff like that. However, they don't want to pay more rent. They refuse to participate in any cleaning or cooking or do anything to make the living environment of everybody that lives in the house better. They refuses to make any decision that needs to be done with the house. He doesn't want to participate financially or in terms of physical energy. After he learns whatever his purpose is coming, his languages, he got his job, he made his money, he gets his residency card, and then he just left. He just left this house. There's no warning, there's nothing. What you gotta understand is the people that was in the house, they increased the house size for him. They chose a neighborhood maybe that satisfies everybody's budget and everybody's need and where they might be working in the future. And then the guy just decided to leave the house afterwards. If you have a roommate like that who pays minimal rent, who does not want to clean, doesn't want to partake in anything, who just comes in, trash the whole house, and then just leaves afterwards, and you're in charge of whatever is remaining because there is reasons why you can't leave that house, how would that make you feel? That's all I'm saying. How would that make you feel? Right? So overall, I think from these 4 articles, it seems like Canada is progressing in the wrong directions and is not providing enough benefits for people for wanting to stay. If people are leaving Canada to go back to whatever country they came from, that means a lot. That probably just means that, we're not as nicely built or nicely put together as the image that we like to give to people. Okay. I also wrote here that I thought that was just kind of funny. It's like Canada used to be a wifey material. Now it's kind of more like a girlfriend material. It's just like you want to come in and then, you want to date this girl a little bit And then, after you use his benefits and stuff, you just want to leave. Back then, Canada was the wifey material. You want to come, you want to have long-term relationships, you want to settle down, you want to work together with with your wife on problems, how to create a better future. Well, none of that. I feel like if we don't solve a lot of these whatever the crisis, insert your own crisis for Canada. If we don't fix it, then yeah, we might just be the girlfriend material for a lot of these immigrants. Okay, so that will basically conclude all the big articles that I do want to cover for this month. I wish I'm a little bit more entertaining. It's a little different when Jeff is not here. But as per usual, I have a couple of off-script stuff that I didn't write any comments on. But I just wanted to share and then just kind of pick up my most immediate reaction to it. The first one is property tax for all major city going up 7.6% for Vancouver, 4.5% for Burnaby. I mean, it wasn't 2023 all about inflation? How can we miss property taxes, right? I mean, they'll go hand in hand, with minimum wages to wage increases to oil prices going up to everything. All of this is all interconnected. For anyone that thinks that, I get to bump minimum wage up, but then we don't have inflation problems, there is some basic economic status things that there must be some misunderstanding. Okay, so I'm not too surprised. I'm pretty sure once more city comes out, it's all gonna be increases. There's no way that this is not gonna be an increase this year. Okay. Secondly, oh man, this is a huge waste of everybody's time. The Burnaby man that sues his strata for start finding residential parking at visitor stalls. This was in the SFU area. The building was operating with a deficit. So one of the owners was like, hey, you're not finding everybody that's using the residence parking. And because of that, we are in a deficit and we are going to be running out of money. And because of that, he decided to take the strata to court. But what ended up happening is that the strata has stated that they could try to find a residence that's parking in the visitor, but it is extremely time consuming and a very difficult task. Yeah, my personal opinion, I give and take. Just because I park at visitor parking sometimes in the old high-rise I used to live in, and I got my car towed, I got my car ticketed so many times. If you have a database of all the driver license that's supposed to be in the parking lot, I don't foresee how this should be a very difficult task. Time consuming? Yeah, probably. Yeah. The strata also counter saying that there's more than enough visitor parking at all times. So I guess saying that by having residents park in the visitor parking, it's not like it has overtaken every single visitor parking that visitors was literally be like, yo guys, I can't park here anymore because it's all full. The article states is that there was still visitor parking available at that time. So, with that being said, the most important thing was the judge didn't find enough evidence that states that, number one, the visitor parking is the reason why the strata is losing money, because if you were to replace a visitor parking pass, it's generally $50 per permit. If you were to find the people that's parking there, that's a homeowner, that is generally a $250 fine. How many of these fines do you need in order to not be in the deficit? Well, I'm just gonna tell you that it's gonna be a lot. So the judge is basically saying that, bro, like even if you start finding all of this, it won't help with the operating. With a deficit is still going to be in a deficit. It might not be as deep in a deficit, but is extremely minuscule to what the overall scale of things. And because of that reason, the court decided to take the strata stance. My take, sometimes I understand dealing with strata is extremely frustrating. And there's many, many times that I got really unhappy with the strata. But do understand, we talked about this before, is strata companies are extremely overstretched. They're not perfect. They won't be perfect unless how we pay them, how many people every strata company decides to hire increases. If not, I really can't see how this can be improved. I see there are some really high-end buildings. Their strata has done an amazing job, because when you go to super high-end buildings, especially one that has not as much investors, generally budgeting strata fees and stuff like that is not as much of a concern. If they can raise it, they will just naturally raise it. So, with that being said, especially this time around, it didn't cause any visitor people having issues. I think the man kind of took it a little bit too far. I understand in principle, I agree with him. He's totally right. What the heck is going on, right? Like, there are these rules, but by taking the effort to sue his own strata, whew, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's consequences to this as well. I mean, imagine what the strata is how is they gonna look at this guy now? Oh my God, he's a troublemaker, right? So on and so on and so on. All right, the last one I want to quickly talk about, which I want to update you guys, which is the U.S. Realtor Commission lawsuit. A lot of realtors don't even want to be talking about this subject right now, because they're like, oh my God, it's going to impact how everything's going to do our business. And the more we talk about it, the more it's going to happen. You remember a month ago when we were talking about there was a whole lawsuit? Well, the update for this month is lawsuit in Missouri was successful against the National Association of Realtors, or the NAR. And now, because it was successful, I think the penalty was 1.6 billion with a B. Now there's literally a flood of lawsuits coming out in other states as well. Basically, sellers are suing NRA, buyers are suing NRA, and yeah, basically NRA is just getting it from all angles. And because, I mean, this was happening before, but there's also already companies and boards, like, for example, the ones in the article says in San Francisco, they already moved away from the buyer's agent representation, and of course not paying buyer's agent any money. Article basically just says the realtor was shocked. Actually, it was the buyer that came. He was like, "Oh, I don't need a realtor anymore. Didn't you know? Like, I could just buy directly from you." And the realtor in the article was kind of saying like, "Whoa, okay, but that means that I have to do double the work. I have to handhold your hands, and I have to handhold the seller's hand." And it just became basically the agent was like, what is happening right now? Why are we doing this, right? And obviously, I think last month we also updated everybody that currently there is a class action lawsuit in Ontario that's getting prepped, and of course our Canadian Real Estate Association is fighting as much as they can, because they're the one getting sued. They're fighting as much as they can and saying that this whole claim is baseless. It's just wasting everybody's time, basically. My thought, honestly, I think change is coming. As we like it or not. I said this last month when we were talking about this, is that I already know so many countries. In fact, there's more countries that I know that has the buyers by paying their buyer's agent and the sellers paying the seller's agent their own individual money. It's not like, only when I grew up and I got into this industry a little bit more that I then understand. It's like, oh, okay, the US, Canada, like, we do things just a little bit differently. Like, recently I was helping a Eastern European client to help, and then literally he was like, how much? I was helping him buy. Even he was like, so how much should I pay you? Like, you're doing all this stuff. You're doing an amazing job. I have nothing but the best thing to say about you. But you never talk about how much I pay. You're not going to charge me like $1 million or something like that at the end, right? And I just found that to be so interesting that even Eastern European countries, like, that caught me by surprise. But good thing I was reading about these articles, so I kind of knew what was going on. And obviously my background, talking to real estate agents in Asia and stuff like that, I know that that's kind of the norm there. what I think this will do, I mean, you could go on YouTube, on Google, and there's so many realtors having opinions on this. Firstly, it's not going to happen anytime soon, I don't think, as per the last podcast that I said. Secondly, I think eventually this will change the way we do business. And once it's changed, this is going to take out a lot of part-time agents or agents that doesn't like to negotiate, because not only do you need to negotiate for getting a listing now, you also need to negotiate trying to get a buyer. And I can say that getting a buyer to negotiate with you is probably going to be quite different in a way where you really have to show your value on why they need to pay you this much. If you're just there to open doors, not give any comments, not give any values, not give, oh, this is a good building, that's a bad building, whatever comments or whatever value you want to give, they're just gonna like, bro, I'm just gonna do this on my own, right? And you might end up getting paid hourly, if at all, right? So I feel like if you really want to be a buyer's agent in the future, you have to be really on top of it, and you really need to know how to create value for yourself, even if the client is a seasoned investor. I mean, first time home buyers, we don't have to say much, but like what happened with the guy who already bought like 2 to 3 times? Do they really need you if you're just there to set up appointments and book appointments and that's it, right? And how's the building? Have you read through the strata documents? Do you know anything about what happened with this before, and what would you deal with this situations and stuff like that? If you're unable to answer those questions confidently, oh my God, I feel like some of these buyers agents are going to be a per hour worker, right? Love it, hate it, change is coming, I think. And you know what? For me personally, I'm not against it. I mean, when we go do listing appointments with clients, we're already talking about how commission needs to be dealt with. And I really don't see how this is going to be any different. Is it annoying that now I now have to say it to both buyers and sellers? Yeah, kind of. But it's just part of the game. I mean, negotiation is part of our job. It's actually one of the biggest components of our jobs, right? And with that being said, that pretty much wraps up this month's news roundup. Hopefully you guys can tolerate me talking like this for such a long period of time without another voice. But I really appreciate, if you have any questions, if you have any comments with anything that I have discussed, please, I would love to hear from you. And with that being said, my name is Joe. My name is Jeff. And we're the Mike for Vancouver Real Estate. And we look forward to seeing you next week, hopefully with Jeff, with Market Update. Bye, guys.